studied BSc Sociology at the London School of Economics, in which my final year I was given the opportunity to conduct my own sociological research. Just to give you a bit of background on sociology, sociology is the study of society. It is everywhere around us and it always occurs in our everyday lives. Sociology can be used to explain certain issues in our society such as crime, gender, race, ethnicity and class. So I was given the opportunity to explore a topic of my interest, and I had an 8-month time span, and I was supervised by my academic advisor. So I chose to focus my project on the migration of Newahs to London and construction of their national identity. I wanted to understand what factors did they use to construct their national identity, why were these factors chosen, and how do they maintain these factors. So there are 2 reasons why I chose this topic. Firstly, the obvious reason, there's not a lot of studies of Newahs here in the UK. And the second reason, as I just mentioned earlier, yes, I am from Nepalese heritage, but I was born and bred here in London. Do I define myself as Nepali or do I define myself as British? And also secondly, my parents, my mom is a Manamir and my dad is a Gurung. Can I define myself nationally or ethnically? So, before I go into my research, I'd like you to introduce you some concepts. I'd like you to take a few seconds just to have a look at these concepts. So what do these concepts mean to you? What is culture? Is it learnt? Is it inherited? How do you separate culture from religion? What is classified as integrating into society? Are we segregated if we choose to represent ourselves differently? For instance, last week you saw the incident at Woolwich. Can we represent these people as being segregated from society? So I'm going to focus on the concept of national identity now. So this concept was introduced for the first time in the 2011 census. Why was it introduced? There's been an increased interest in national consciousness and demanding people to acknowledge their national identity. This concept is considered to be multidimensional. This means that in the 2011 census, people had the opportunity to tick more than one national identity. As a result of that, 91% of participants identified themselves with at least one UK national identity, these being English, Scottish, Welsh, Northern Irish and British. You can see that people are associating themselves in more than one national identity. So if you have a look at this chart, it shows national identity in England and Wales in 2011. As you can see, in all areas of the UK except for Wales, English had the highest percentage in terms of how one defined their national identity. If you have a look at London, you can see that British has the highest national identity. And the reason for that is because London is considered to be a multicultural city. So this draws my attention to the concept of British and Britishness. In today's society, this concept is rather arbitrary, or it's rather diffused, as it is really difficult to define. Having said that, what exactly is British? What values can be implemented within this? What culture can be part of this? Who can claim it? Who can be involved in this concept? Who has the right to be involved? And finally, is the concept used according to the social setting or context? Can we use this concept to unify people? For instance, last year you saw in the Olympics, a lot of people from various different ethnic minority backgrounds claimed that they were proud to be British. So how did I go about developing my research? I firstly focused on previous literature which focused on the issues of migration and national identity. Just to give you a few examples, Anwar Madud focused on first and second generation ethnic minorities Britons. Jessica May Sims actually looked at the Gurkhas here in Britain and claimed that adjusting to civilian lifestyle was the next step in their migration process. Macron focused on the issue of identity markers, which are social characteristics which one may use to define their national identity, racial, also ethnic minorities return back to their homeland. Using this previous literature, I was then able to focus and construct my research question. So my research question was, how does migration to London affect Newahs people's national identity? My sub-question was, in what ways do Newahs people preserve their national identity after migrating to London? From this, I developed my research aims. So my first aim was to acknowledge if Newahs perceive themselves to be more Newahs or more British once settled in London. And my second research aim was to identify how Newahs' chosen national identity is sustained according to any festivals they celebrate, the religion, if any, they believe in, and their choice of language, food, friends, values, and culture. So how did I collect the data? I used semi-structured interviews with 8 participants. Each interview lasted from an hour and a half. These were recorded and transcribed for later analysis. They all took place in a public setting, and I also presented a consent form so that participants knew the purpose of my research. Participants were recruited through an organisation, but as participation was voluntary, I had to use a technique called snowball sampling. This is when participants of my study, of your study, refer you to someone else who they think will fit the nature of your research. I then went on to analyse my data using something called thematic analysis. This is when you look across all of the interviews or all of your transcriptions and you pick out the main themes which occur in all of the interviews. So what exactly did I find? There was a lot of things I found, but I'm going to focus on the 5 main themes which emerged from each of the interviews, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of each of the themes. So the first theme that occurred was opportunities in Britain. Reasons for migration was because of educational and work opportunities. This is known as Stephen Cassis' neoclassical theory, in which it suggests that people migrate in order to maximise their potential economically. Participants also claimed that their life had improved once migrating to Britain. This was especially significant amongst females, as they felt that they didn't have to perform the traditional gender roles current and present in Nepalese culture and society. The next theme that emerged was integrating into British culture. When asked about the differences between the Nepalese and British culture, participants often compared these together. They claim that the Nepalese culture focused on issues such as collective values and family values, whereas the British culture focused on social values, and it was rather individualistic. Having said that, participants felt they did not feel part of this culture. What was more interesting was that participants felt it was necessary to be part of a certain race to be accepted into a certain society or culture. In this sense, participants felt that it was necessary to be white in order to be accepted into the British society. But as London is a multicultural city, participants felt they could claim their form of Britishness. British, therefore, is a fragmented concept in which people use as and when they need it. The third theme that emerged was that of the Nepalese national identity. Unsurprisingly, all participants in my study define themselves as Nepalese. And the reason for that is because they identify the key identity markers being place of birth. And as participants had been born in Nepal and spent their early life there, they had a strong emotional attachment with Nepal and therefore defined themselves as Nepalese. So the fourth theme to emerge was how did they go about maintaining their national identity? Participants all mentioned they took part in festivals and cultural events, both in the private and public sphere. They felt that it was necessary to take part in maintaining their national identity. They also felt that it was more important to integrate into Newah culture than that of British culture. They found that integrating into the Nepalese or the Newah culture was highly satisfying in comparison to be integrating into the British culture. And finally, the fifth theme that emerged was how did they preserve the culture, preserving the culture for future generations. All participants felt it was necessary to pass on their culture and national identity to the younger generation. However, they were very flexible in their approach, and they claimed that it was necessary for young Nepali people born here or in a Western society to also embrace the culture of that society. Some participants also believed they would define their national identity as British had they migrated here at a younger age. Some participants also believed that Nepali-born children in a Western society and raised in a Western society would define themselves as being British in order not to be excluded from their British peers. So just to summarise the main findings, Newahs migrated due to educational work opportunities, and many did not feel integrated into British society. The key identity marker defined by participants was that of place of birth. The Nepalese national identity was maintained by celebrating festivals both in the private and public sphere. Participants felt that it was important to pass on the Nepalese identity and their values to the children, as well as allow them to embrace the culture here. Although my research was small scale, I do believe that it provides a platform for future research on Newahs here in the UK, especially on the issues of migration, national identity. In the future, if this research was conducted again, it may be possible to increase the sample size and focus on Newahs beyond an organisation, perhaps look at Newahs outside of London. Had I more time and resources, I could have conducted a longitudinal study to mirror that of Ramji's, to focus when participants would define their endpoint in migration. So before I wrap up my presentation, I'd just like to leave you with a thought. The identity you think you are does not exist. Do we negotiate our identity to our surroundings? Can national identity be modified? Are the values, culture, and norms all socially constructed to create some sort of distinction between national identities, between ethnicities, between races, or groups and individuals? Do we inherit our national identity from families? Can we really have more than one national identity? Do our peers influence who we say we are in a given context?